The coffee was scalding. The man I drenched was deadlier. And my ex-boyfriend, the one I was running from, just made the worst mistake of his life trying to follow me into that elevator. A woman runs from the man who won't let her go, straight into the arms of the most dangerous man in the city. One spilled coffee, one collision, one decision that seals her fate forever. The copper-paneled walls of the Sterling Heights Hotel elevator gleamed like old money and new threats, reflecting my face back at me in fractured, distorted pieces. My fingers wrapped around the paper coffee cup so tightly the cardboard bent inward, the heat barely registering against my clammy palms. I focused on that warmth, anything to ground me against the ice-cold panic spreading through my chest. I'd been coming to this hotel for work deliveries for 2 months now, always using the side entrance by the loading docks, always staying invisible. Today, my supervisor had redirected me through the main lobby to hand-deliver documents to a client on the executive floor, of course. Because my life wasn't complicated enough without walking through a space where Mark might find me. The lobby had stretched before me like a cathedral of wealth, vaulted ceilings, imported marble, arrangements of white orchids that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My worn ballet flats had made soft sounds against that flawless floor, each step announcing my presence, marking me as someone who didn't belong. I'd kept my head down, counting steps, 32 to the elevators. Then I could disappear upward, hand off the envelope, and vanish back into my careful, hidden existence. 32 steps. I could manage that. Debra, the voice cut through the lobby's ambient hum like a blade through silk. My lungs seized. That familiar tone smooth on the surface, sharp underneath turned my blood to ice. I didn't turn around. Maybe if I kept walking, he'd think he was mistaken. Maybe the universe would show mercy just this once. Debra, stop. I know you heard me. Footsteps behind me, measured and deliberate. My pulse hammered against my ribs as I clutched the coffee tighter and walked faster, the envelope tucked under my arm, crinkling with each step. 20 steps to the elevators. Just 20 more steps. Don't you dare run from me. His hand shot out, fingers circling my upper arm, yanking me backward hard enough that coffee sloshed over the cup's rim and burned my thumb. I gasped, spinning to face him. Mark Ellison looked exactly as he had 3 months ago, when I'd finally escaped, dark hair precisely styled, hazel eyes that had once seemed protective, but now just looked predatory. He wore a charcoal suit that his father's law firm probably paid for, since Mark had never kept a job longer than 6 months. The familiar scent of his cologne, something woody and aggressive, made my stomach clench with muscle memory. I have a delivery to make, I said, hating how my voice trembled. Please let me go. Let you go? His laugh was low and ugly. Like you let me go? Packed your shit while I was at work, changed your number, blocked me everywhere. 2 years together, Debra, and you just disappear? You know why I left. I tried to step back, but his grip tightened. Not hard enough to bruise, Mark was too smart for that, but firm enough to remind me that I wasn't leaving until he allowed it. I gave you back your key. I explained everything. Explained? He leaned closer, voice dropping to that dangerous whisper I knew too well. You humiliated me. Do you know what my colleagues said when they found out? What my mother thinks? That I couldn't even keep my girlfriend in line. There it was. Everything with Mark always circled back to him, his image, his reputation, how things looked to people whose opinions shouldn't matter. I'd spent 2 years trying to fold myself small enough to fit his vision of the perfect girlfriend. Agreeable, quiet, always available, never questioning. The day I'd moved into my studio apartment with just 2 suitcases and my grandmother's quilt had been the first time I'd breathed fully in months. I'm sorry you're hurt, I managed, aiming for calm while my heart tried to break through my ribs. But we weren't good for each other. You know that. What I know. His fingers dug deeper into my arm, and the coffee cup crumpled slightly under my white-knuckled grip. Is that you owe me a real conversation? Face to face. Like adults. This is face to face, and I'm saying no. We're not done, Debra. His free hand reached for my wrist. Not even close. The elevator chimed behind me. Instinct took over. I twisted hard, breaking his grip with a sudden surge of adrenaline that surprised us both, and ran. The coffee sloshed violently. The envelope slipped from under my arm, but I didn't stop, didn't look back. Just lunged toward those opening elevator doors like they were the gates of sanctuary. I crashed into someone solid, someone tall. The collision knocked the air from my lungs. My coffee cup exploded upward, the lid popping off, sending a wave of scalding cappuccino across the man's face, down his neck. Soaking into what I registered, even through my panic, was an impeccably tailored cobalt suit, For one frozen heartbeat, everything stopped. The man stood utterly still, head tilted back slightly, eyes closed, dark liquid dripping from his sharp jawline onto his crisp white shirt. Tattoos peeked from beneath his collar, snaking up his neck in elegant, dangerous patterns. When his eyes opened, they were the color of smoke and steel cold, assessing, and fixed directly on me. I opened my mouth. No sound came out, only a strangled gasp of horror. "Oh my God! Oh my God! I'm so—" "Debra!" Mark's voice, right behind me, furious now. His footsteps pounded closer. The tattooed man's gaze shifted past me, landing on Mark with the kind of attention a predator gives prey. Something changed in his expression, something that made the air in that opulent lobby feel suddenly, dangerously thin. Mark reached the elevator, tried to push forward. "Get out of my way." The man moved. Not quickly, not aggressively. He simply stepped between us, one hand rising with casual precision to press the door's close button, his body a wall of controlled threat. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. "The elevator's full," he said quietly. Mark froze mid-motion, recognition flickering across his face. Or maybe it was fear. For the first time since I'd known him, Mark Ellison looked uncertain. The doors began to slide shut. "Debra!" Mark lunged forward, but the tattooed man, still dripping with coffee, still perfectly calm, shifted his weight just slightly, and Mark stopped like he'd hit an invisible barrier. The doors sealed with a soft, final click. Silence crashed over us. I stood there, back pressed against the mirrored wall, staring at the man I'd just drenched in coffee, at his ruined suit, his ink-dark tattoos, his expression that revealed absolutely nothing. My hands shook so badly I dropped the crushed cup. It hit the elevator floor with a hollow sound. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. I was running and I didn't see." The elevator jolted. Lights flickered. We stopped moving. The man's eyes, those cold, smoke-colored eyes, finally met mine fully, and the corner of his mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Well," he said softly, his voice like gravel wrapped in silk. "This is interesting." Emergency lights bathed us in amber. We were suspended between floors, trapped together, and I realized with dawning horror that I had no idea who this man was. But from the way Mark had backed away, from the dangerous stillness that radiated from him like heat, I'd just crashed into someone far more dangerous than the man I was running from. Before we continue, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit that like button, and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our little dark romance family stretch across cities, countries, and time zones, from midnight watchers in Tokyo to coffee sippers in New York. Every comment, every bit of love you leave here helps us keep bringing you these dangerous, beautiful stories of obsession and protection. So settle in, dim the lights, and let's unravel this together. I should have recognized the signs. The way hotel security had gone quiet when he'd entered, the deference in the lobby staff's expressions. But I'd been too busy running from Mark to notice the warnings, too desperate to escape one trap to realize I'd just stumbled into another. Because the man standing across from me in that stalled elevator, coffee dripping from his jaw, wasn't just anyone. He was James Thompson. And in this city, that name meant something you didn't say out loud unless you wanted to disappear. The emergency lights flickered again, casting shadows that made James Thompson's face look carved from stone. I pressed harder against the mirrored wall, trying to put distance between us in a space barely 6 feet across. "I'm sorry," I said again, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm so sorry about the coffee. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to get away from—" "Stop." The single word cut through my rambling. Not loud, but absolute. I stopped. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, who even carried handkerchiefs anymore, and wiped coffee from his jaw with slow, deliberate movements. The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled taut. "Stop shaking," he said finally, his tone sharp but not unkind. "You're making the elevator move." I looked down at my trembling hands, clenched them into fists. "We're stuck. We're stopped. There's a difference." He tucked the ruined handkerchief away, his movements precise despite the chaos I'd caused. The emergency protocols engaged. "Someone will restart it soon." Soon. How soon? 5 minutes? An hour? Trapped in a metal box with a man whose suit probably cost more than my car, whose tattoos suggested connections I didn't want to think about, whose calm in the face of disaster felt more dangerous than panic would have. "The man chasing you," James said, leaning against the opposite wall with unsettling ease. "Who is he?" "Nobody. Just someone I used to know." Nobody doesn't chase someone through a hotel lobby. His eyes cold gray in the amber light fixed on me with an intensity that made me feel pinned like a specimen under glass. And you don't run like that from nobody. I swallowed hard. It's complicated. Most dangerous things are. He tilted his head slightly, studying me. Are you in danger? The question hung in the air between us. Was I? Mark had never hit me, never left bruises. But the way he'd grabbed my arm downstairs, the rage in his voice, I'm handling it. That didn't look like handling it. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of something almost like concern before the mask of indifference returned. That looked like running. What else was I supposed to do? The words came out sharper than intended, fueled by adrenaline and fear, and the surreal horror of this entire situation. Stay, and let him. The elevator shuddered violently. I gasped, stumbling forward as the floor tilted. Strong hands caught me, steadied me, and I found myself pressed against James's chest, against the soaked fabric that still smelled of coffee, and something darker, expensive cologne mixed with something I couldn't name. Easy. His voice rumbled through his chest, vibrating against my cheek. Just the cable settling. We're not falling. I should have pulled away, should have put distance between us. But his hands on my shoulders were steady, grounding, and for a moment I let myself lean into that strange, unexpected safety. Then I heard it, pounding, muffled shouting from below. Debra, I know you're in there. This isn't over. Mark's voice, distorted by metal and distance, but unmistakable, calling me names I'd never heard him use before, each one sharper than the last, each one revealing the man I'd tried so hard to convince myself didn't exist. Ungrateful bitch, after everything I did for you. I flinched. James's hands tightened on my shoulders, not restraining but anchoring. I felt his jaw clench above me, tension radiating through his frame. How long? He asked quietly. What? How long has he been like this? I couldn't answer. Couldn't admit that I'd ignored the signs for 2 years, that I'd made excuses, that I'd believed Mark when he said he only acted this way because he loved me so much. He doesn't love you, James said, as if reading my thoughts. His voice was calm, matter of fact, devastating in its certainty. Men who love don't chase, don't corner, don't grab. He pulled back slightly, forcing me to meet his eyes. He just hates losing control. The truth of it hit me like cold water. I left him 3 months ago, I whispered. I thought if I disappeared, he'd move on. Men like him don't move on. James released me, but stayed close, his presence a wall between me and the door where Mark's voice still echoed. They escalate. The elevator jolted again, then hummed back to life. The normal lights flickered on, harsh and bright after the amber glow. We began moving upward. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt exposed, like the emergency had created a bubble that was now bursting, returning us to reality where I'd assaulted a stranger with scalding coffee and confessed my mess of a life to someone who absolutely didn't need to hear it. Thank you, I said quickly, backing toward the corner as the elevator climbed. You didn't have to. Stop apologizing. He straightened his ruined jacket, and I caught a glimpse of more tattoos beneath the fabric, intricate designs that disappeared under his collar. What floor? 12. But I can just... He pressed the button without asking. The doors opened at 12. I grabbed my bag, moved toward the exit, then hesitated. Your suit. I'll pay for the cleaning, or... No need. His voice stopped me at the threshold. I turned back. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't read, something calculating and certain, and almost predatory. We'll see each other again, Debra. It wasn't a question. The doors closed before I could ask how he knew my name. The elevator doors had barely closed, before hotel security materialized in the hallway. 3 men in sharp suits who took one look at James Thompson through the closing gap and went pale. They didn't ask questions. They just cleared the area with quiet efficiency, ushering confused guests toward the stairs, speaking into radios with hushed urgency. I stood frozen outside the elevator, watching this unfold, my delivery envelope still clutched uselessly in my hand. James emerged 2 floors later, appearing beside me so suddenly I jumped. His suit was still stained, but he moved like it didn't matter, like he owned every space he occupied. Come on, he said, his hand hovering near my lower back without quite touching. I'll drive you home. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. I'm fine. I can get myself home. His eyes narrowed slightly, assessing. After that? After that, I need to pretend today didn't happen. I stepped back, putting distance between us. Thank you for what you did. But I don't need anything else. He didn't argue, didn't push, just watched me walk toward the stairs with an intensity I could feel burning between my shoulder blades. When I glanced back from the stairwell, he was still there, completely still, his gaze following my retreat like he was memorizing every step. Mark appeared at the corporate office where I worked the next morning. I was at the reception desk, processing intake forms, when I saw him through the glass doors. My stomach dropped. He looked composed, professional even, in a different suit, like yesterday had never happened. He walked straight to my desk. We need to talk. You need to leave. I kept my voice low, conscious of my coworkers' stares. Now, not until you stop being childish and listen. Is there a problem? My supervisor, Janet, appeared beside us, her expression tight, with barely concealed irritation. No problem, Mark said smoothly, flashing the charming smile I'd once fallen for. Just visiting my girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend, I corrected quickly. And he's leaving. Janet's lips pressed into a thin line. After Mark finally left, escorted out by building security, she pulled me into her office. Debra, I need to be direct with you. She sat behind her desk, fingers steepled. You're a good worker, but personal drama can't follow you here. If this continues, you're becoming a liability we can't afford. The words hit like a slap. I understand, but I didn't. I didn't understand how Mark's harassment was somehow my fault, how his refusal to accept reality made me the problem. The lock on my apartment door stuck that evening. I jiggled my key, frowning. It had worked fine this morning. Now it caught, grinding in a way that felt wrong. When it finally opened, I stood in the doorway for a long moment, scanning my small studio with paranoid intensity. Nothing looked disturbed, but something felt off. I checked the windows locked, checked the fire escape empty, told myself I was being paranoid, that stress was making me imagine threats where none existed. But when I went to bed, I pushed my dresser in front of the door anyway. James was leaning against a black Mercedes when I left for work the next morning. He looked like he belonged there, despite the shabby street, despite the early hour. Arms crossed, expression unreadable, watching me descend the steps of my building with the same focused attention from the hotel. I stopped 3 feet away, heart hammering. Are you following me? Checking on you. He straightened, and I noticed he wore a different suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, no coffee stains. How'd you sleep? Fine. A lie. I'd barely slept at all. Your lock's been tampered with. The casual certainty in his voice froze me. How do you? Because I know what it looks like when someone's testing entry points. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming in the quiet morning street. This will keep happening until he believes you're no longer his concern. I'll file a police report, which will take weeks to process and won't stop him from showing up at your job. Again, James tilted his head slightly. He was there yesterday, wasn't he? And your boss blamed you for it. My silence was answer enough. How do you know all this? I demanded, fear mixing with something uncomfortably close to relief that anyone was paying attention. How do you even know my name? Where I work? Where I live? I bought the building across from the cafe where you work, he said simply, like this was a normal thing to admit. 3 weeks ago. I've seen you around the neighborhood. His eyes held mine, steady and sure. I know who you are, Debra Jewett. I knew before you crashed into me. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they made my knees weak. What do you want? To help you. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker. I can make Mark Ellison disappear from your life. Permanently. Legally. In exchange for what? Be seen with me. Publicly. For 6 months. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. You'll live in my penthouse, under full security. You'll attend events as my girlfriend. In return, Mark never bothers you again. I stepped back, shaking my head. That's insane. I don't even know you. You know I stopped him yesterday. You know I'm offering you safety. He didn't follow, just watched me retreat. Think about it. I don't need to think about it. The answer is no. But even as I walked away, I felt his gaze on me steady, patient, certain, and despite everything, I felt safer with him watching than I had in months. The call came during my lunch break 2 days later. Debra, it's Janet. We need to talk. My supervisor's voice was strained, apologetic in a way that made my stomach sink. Can you come to my office? I knew before I walked through the door. Knew from the way Janet wouldn't meet my eyes, from the HR representative sitting in the corner with a folder. "We've received some concerning information," Janet began carefully. "Multiple calls from someone claiming to be a former employer, raising questions about your reliability and Mark." His name tasted bitter. It was Mark Ellison, wasn't it? Janet's silence confirmed it. "He's lying. Whatever he said." "I believe you," she cut in gently. "But these allegations require investigation. We're placing you on administrative leave pending review. 2 weeks, paid, pending review. Corporate speak for, we don't want the liability." I cleaned out my desk in numb silence while coworkers whispered, their stares burning into my back. Mark had done exactly what James predicted escalated. Made me the problem that needed to be eliminated. "Go to the police," my best friend Maya insisted that night, pacing my tiny apartment with wine-fueled conviction. "File a restraining order. Sue him for harassment. With what lawyer? What money?" I sat on my bed, knees drawn up, feeling hollowed out. "Mark's father is a partner at one of the biggest firms in the city." "The system moves slow, Maya. He moves fast." "So what, you just let him destroy your life?" "I don't know." The words came out sharper than intended. "I don't know what to do." Maya softened, sitting beside me. "Maybe you should consider that guy's offer. The one from the hotel." "James Thompson? Are you serious?" I stared at her. "You want me to move in with a man I don't know because another man I thought I knew turned out to be a nightmare? How is that better?" "Because Thompson stopped Mark without even trying. Because he's offering protection, not control." She squeezed my hand. "Sometimes the safest place is next to the most dangerous person." James was waiting outside my building again the next evening. This time I wasn't surprised. This time I walked directly to him, exhausted and angry and desperate enough to listen. "You predicted this," I said without preamble. "The job thing. You knew. Men like him escalate." He straightened from the car, his expression unreadable in the streetlight. "I told you that." "You did." I crossed my arms, trying to hold myself together. "So tell me again, what exactly are you offering?" He moved closer, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. "You live in my penthouse, full security, your own space, complete privacy. You attend events with me when needed, dinners, galas, the kind of appearances that establish you're under my protection. For how long? 6 months. After that, you're free to leave. Mark will be handled permanently by then, legally, quietly. He'll never contact you again. And what do you get out of this?" I searched his face for answers. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Something flickered in his eyes, something dark and possessive that should have frightened me. "You're not a stranger. Not anymore." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." He took another step closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to hold his gaze. "I can give you safety, Debra. Real safety. Not restraining orders that take weeks to file and do nothing to stop him from showing up wherever you are. Not police reports he'll charm his way out of with his father's lawyers. Actual, permanent protection. In exchange for what? Playing pretend girlfriend? There has to be more." "There isn't." His voice was firm, final. "Those are the terms. Take them or don't." I wanted to say no. Wanted to insist I could handle this myself, that I didn't need a man, especially not one with James Thompson's reputation, to save me. But Mark had cost me my job, had violated my home, had proven that my independence meant nothing when he decided I still belonged to him. "This feels like trading one cage for another," I whispered. "The difference is simple." James's voice dropped lower, something fierce and honest breaking through his controlled exterior. "I don't need to own you, Debra. I need to protect what I choose, and I've chosen you." The words hung between us, weighted with implications I didn't fully understand. "Why me?" I asked. "You could have anyone. Why choose someone who dumped coffee on you and brings nothing but problems?" His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "Maybe I like problems." I looked away, toward my apartment building, with its flickering hallway light and broken buzzer. Thought about Mark showing up here, about losing my job, about how small and trapped I felt despite technically being free. "I need time," I said finally, "to think about it. You have 24 hours. He pulled a card from his pocket, pressed it into my palm. His fingers were warm against mine. "After that, the offer expires." He walked back to his car, movements fluid and certain. Before getting in, he looked back. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I hope you say yes." Then he was gone, and I was standing alone on the sidewalk, clutching a business card that felt like both a lifeline and a contract with the devil. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. The footsteps behind me were deliberate, matching my pace exactly. I'd left Maya's apartment after midnight, insisting I was fine to walk the 6 blocks home. Now, halfway there, the empty street felt like a tunnel closing in. I walked faster. The footsteps quickened. Debra. Mark's voice cut through the darkness. I ran. Didn't think, didn't look back, just ran, my keys clutched between my fingers like claws. His footsteps pounded behind me, closer, and I knew with sick certainty that he was faster, that I wouldn't make it to my building, that my phone was in my hand before I consciously decided. James's card was still in my pocket, his number already programmed from 3 days of staring at it, debating, refusing to admit I'd already made my choice. The call connected. Debra. His voice was alert, immediate, like he'd been waiting. Where are you? Mark's following me. I'm on. I gasped out the street name, my breath ragged. I'm running. Stop running. Stay on the line. Commands, sharp and clear. I heard him moving, a door slamming, an engine roaring to life. Which direction is he coming from? Behind me. Turn around. Face him. What? Turn. Around. Something in his voice made me obey despite every instinct screaming to keep running. I spun, backing against a storefront window, phone pressed to my ear. Mark stopped 10 feet away, breathing hard, his expression wild in the streetlight. Who are you calling? Hang up the phone, Debra. Hang up right now. I'm 3 minutes away, James said in my ear, his voice laced with something cold and lethal. Keep him talking. Mark took a step closer. You can't keep avoiding me. We need to talk about us. There is no us. My voice shook but held. Leave me alone, Mark. Or what? His laugh was unhinged. You'll call the cops? My father knows half the precinct. You'll get a restraining order? Those are just paper, baby. They don't stop anything. Headlights appeared at the end of the street, moving fast. The black Mercedes came to a sharp stop 15 feet away. James emerged from the driver's seat with terrifying calm, his movements fluid and purposeful. He wore dark jeans and a fitted black shirt, no jacket, and in the harsh streetlight I saw the full extent of the tattoos covering his arms, intricate, beautiful, dangerous. Mark's confidence evaporated. This doesn't concern you. James crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. He didn't touch Mark, didn't need to. He simply stood there, taller, broader, radiating controlled violence. Walk away, James said quietly. Now, she's my girlfriend. She's under my protection. Each word was precise, final. If I see you near her again, if you call her, text her, look in her direction, I will end you. Legally if possible, otherwise if necessary. Do you understand? Mark's face went white. He looked at me, then at James, then back at me. You're making a mistake, Debra. He's not who you think. Leave. James's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, more threatening than any shout. Before I stopped being reasonable, Mark stumbled backward, then turned and ran. James watched him disappear around the corner before turning to me. His eyes scanned me head to toe, checking for injuries with an intensity that made my breath catch. Are you hurt? I shook my head, unable to speak. Get in the car. I moved into the penthouse the next morning. James sent a team to pack my apartment, efficient, professional people who handled my meager belongings with more care than they deserved. I stood in the lobby of James's building, craning my neck to see the top floors, wondering what I'd just agreed to. The penthouse occupied the entire 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. Modern furniture mixed with antique pieces that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. And everywhere were subtle signs of James's world. Security cameras in corners, a biometric panel by the entrance, doors with keypads instead of knobs. Miss Jewett. A woman in her 50s approached, her smile warm but professional. I'm Caroline, Mr. Thompson's house manager. Let me show you to your suite. Suite. Not room. Suite. It was bigger than my entire apartment bedroom. Sitting area, private bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. My boxes looked absurd against the elegant furniture. Mr. Thompson wanted you to know you have complete privacy here, Caroline said gently. Your suite locks from the inside. No one enters without your permission. The tension I'd been holding released slightly. Thank you. He also asked me to give you this. She handed me a phone new, expensive. His number's programmed. Security team's numbers too. You need anything, day or night, you call. James found me an hour later, standing at the windows, watching the city sprawl below. Settling in? His voice was careful, like I was something fragile he might break. It's a lot to process. I turned to face him. The security, the staff, I gestured vaguely at the opulence. All of this. You're safe here. He moved closer, stopping just within arm's reach. That's what matters. Why are you doing this? I asked again, needing to understand. Really? He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was memorizing it. Then he reached out, his fingers brushing against mine, barely a touch, more a question than a claim. Because the moment you crashed into me, he said softly, everything changed. The contact sent electricity up my arm. I should have pulled away, should have maintained distance, kept this arrangement professional and temporary. Instead, I let my fingers curl slightly against his. I'm terrified, I whispered. I know. His thumb stroked across my knuckles once, gentle despite the violence I'd seen him capable of. But you're not alone anymore. Right here, this moment. This is when everything shifts from transaction to something real. And if you're feeling it too, if your heart's racing the way Debra's is, let me know. Hit that like button, drop a comment about the exact moment you knew James was more than just protection. I read every single one, and I love seeing how this community connects over these beautiful, dangerous love stories. Because what's coming next will test everything they've built. The gown James had sent to my suite was midnight blue, silk that clung and flowed in equal measure. I'd stared at it for 20 minutes before finally putting it on, watching myself transform in the mirror into someone I barely recognized, someone who belonged in James Thompson's world. You look perfect, James said when I emerged, his eyes darkening as they traveled over me. He wore a black tuxedo that made him look like elegant danger personified. Ready? No. But I took his offered arm anyway. The charity gala was held in a historic mansion, all vaulted ceilings and crystal chandeliers. I'd expected to feel out of place, awkward, exposed as the fraud I was. Instead, something unexpected happened. I fit. Maybe it was the gown, or the way James's hand rested possessively on my lower back, or the weeks of watching him move through his world with absolute confidence. But when he introduced me, "This is Debra, my girlfriend," the words didn't feel like a lie. "You're a natural," he murmured as we moved through the crowd, his lips close to my ear. "I half expected you to bolt." I considered it. I smiled at a passing couple, playing the part. But the shoes are too expensive to waste. His quiet laugh surprised me, warmed something in my chest I wasn't ready to examine. We were at the bar when I felt it, that crawling sensation of being watched. I turned slightly, scanning the crowd. A man stood across the room, staring directly at me. He was tall, blonde, handsome in a cold, precise way that made my skin prickle. His suit was white, unusual, striking, deliberate, and the way he looked at me felt like being dissected. "James," I said quietly. "Who's that?" James followed my gaze and went utterly still. The hand on my back tightened almost imperceptibly. "Victor Delenko." His voice was carefully neutral, but I heard the warning beneath. "Stay close to me." Before I could ask why, Victor was crossing the room toward us with the fluid confidence of a predator who'd spotted prey. "Thompson." Victor's accent was faint, Eastern European, polished by years in America. "I didn't know you'd be here tonight." His eyes slid to me, assessing, "Or that you'd bring such lovely company." "Delenko." James's tone could have cut glass. "This is private. In a room full of people?" Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his ice-blue eyes. He extended his hand to me. "Victor Delenko." "And you are?" "Taken," James said before I could respond. Victor's smile widened. "How refreshing." The great James Thompson, finally showing attachment to something other than territory and profit. He looked back at me. You must be extraordinary to capture his attention. There was something in his tone, something that made the compliment feel like a threat. "If you'll excuse us," James said, his hand sliding to my waist, pulling me closer against his side. "Of course." Victor stepped back, but his gaze lingered on me. "Enjoy your evening. Both of you." James guided me away with barely controlled tension radiating through his frame. We moved to a quiet corner, partially hidden by an elaborate floral arrangement. "Don't look at him," James said, his voice low and urgent. "Don't acknowledge him. Don't make eye contact. He's poison, Debra." "Who is he?" "Someone who operates in the same circles I do. Someone who thrives on finding leverage." His jaw was tight, eyes scanning the room. Someone who just learned something he shouldn't have. My stomach dropped. What did he learn? James looked at me then, something fierce and protective burning in his eyes. That you mattered to me. Before I could process that, before I could ask what it meant, Victor's voice carried across the room. He was talking to another man, but loud enough for us to hear. I didn't know Thompson had a weakness, Victor said, laughing. Thanks for showing me. James's entire body went rigid. We're leaving, he said quietly. James. Now. The drive back to the penthouse was silent, James's knuckles white on the steering wheel. When we arrived, he made a phone call before we even reached the elevator, sharp, clipped instructions to someone on his security team. Inside the penthouse, he paced like a caged animal. I need to increase your detail, he said, more to himself than to me. Nico will shadow you everywhere. No exceptions. James, you're scaring me. He stopped, running a hand through his hair. Good. You should be scared. Victor doesn't make idle observations. He studies. He plans. He exploits. Exploits what? Weaknesses. He crossed to me, hands framing my face with surprising gentleness. You walked into that room as an arrangement, a business transaction. You're walking out as a target. The weight of his world crashed over me, then the reality of what I'd agreed to, who I'd aligned myself with. This wasn't just about protection from Mark anymore. This was organized crime, territory disputes, men who saw people as chess pieces to be captured and sacrificed. I didn't understand, I whispered. How dangerous this really is. I know. His thumbs stroked my cheekbones, his eyes dark with something that looked like regret. And I'm sorry. But it's too late now. Victor's seen you. He knows you're mine. Mine. The word should have angered me. Instead, it made me feel safer and more terrified in equal measure. What do? We prepare, James said softly. And we don't let our guard down. Not for a second. The phone call came at 3 a.m. I woke to shouting James's voice from somewhere in the penthouse, sharp and lethal in a way I'd never heard. My heart hammered as I pulled on a robe and crept to my door, pressing my ear against it. Don't care what it takes. Find her. A crash. Something shattering. She's 17 years old, Marcus. Find her. I opened the door to chaos. James stood in the living room, surrounded by 6 men, all armed, all wearing expressions of grim fury. Papers were scattered across the coffee table. A laptop displayed what looked like surveillance footage. And James looked unhinged. His shirt was half unbuttoned, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. When he saw me, something cracked in his expression. Get back in your room, he said, but there was no heat in it, just exhaustion and barely contained rage. What happened? Nothing that concerns. He stopped, jaw clenching. Sophia Martinelli was taken from her apartment 2 hours ago. She's the daughter of one of my business partners. 17, straight-A student. Never been involved in any of this. My blood went cold. Taken by who? His eyes met mine, and I saw the answer before he spoke. Victor. One of the men cleared his throat. Boss, the message. James's hands curled into fists. Show her. The man turned the laptop toward me. An email. No sender, just a single line. Give me your territories, or Debra is next. The room tilted. I grabbed the back of a chair, suddenly unable to breathe. We're moving you, James said, already in motion, issuing orders. Nico, get the upstate safe house ready. I want 4 men on perimeter, 2 inside. No one gets within a mile without clearance. James, full provisions for 2 weeks minimum. Communications blackout except emergency channels. James, stop. And I want hourly check-ins. No exceptions. James. I grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at me. I'm not leaving. Yes, you are. His voice was flat, absolute. You're leaving in 20 minutes. While you're here dealing with this? With Victor? No, this isn't a negotiation. Debra. Neither is keeping me in a cage. Frustration and fear made my voice sharp. That girl was taken because of you, because of your world. Running away won't change. She was taken because Victor wants leverage. James stepped closer, his voice dropping to something raw and desperate. And right now, you're the best leverage he could ask for. Don't you understand? He'll use you to destroy me. So you send me away and what handle this alone? I handle this the way I always do. Something dark flickered in his eyes. With violence, if necessary. The casualness of the statement should have terrified me. Instead, I saw past it to the fear underneath. Fear for Sophia, fear for me, fear of losing control of a situation spiraling toward bloodshed. "I don't want to leave you," I whispered. His expression cracked. "And I don't want you here when Victor decides to make good on his threat." He reached out, his hand cupping my face with devastating gentleness. "You matter more than you should, Debra. More than is smart or safe or rational. So please, please don't fight me on this." The words hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us was ready to examine. "How long?" I asked quietly. "Until I find Sophia. Until I eliminate the threat." His thumb stroked my cheekbone. "Until you're safe. And if something happens to you?" "It won't. James. It won't." He pulled me against his chest, arms wrapping around me with fierce protectiveness. I felt his heartbeat, rapid and strong, felt the way he breathed me in like he was memorizing the moment. "I promise you, I will come back." 20 minutes later, I stood in the penthouse lobby with a hastily packed bag, surrounded by James's men. Nico, tall, scarred, utterly professional, briefed me on the safe house protocols while James spoke quietly with Marcus near the elevator. When it was time to leave, James walked me to the car himself. "Don't try to contact me," he said, opening the door. "Communications blackout means even my number won't work from the safe house. It's for your protection." "I hate this." "I know." He leaned down, his forehead resting briefly against mine. The gesture was so intimate, so unexpected, that tears burned behind my eyes. "But I need to know you're safe so I can do what needs to be done." "Find her," I whispered. "Find Sophia and bring her home." "I will." His lips brushed my temple, soft and achingly brief. "And then I'm coming for you." I climbed into the car. Through the tinted window, I watched James stand on the curb, hands in his pockets, his expression carved from stone. As we pulled away, he didn't move, didn't look away, just watched until the car turned the corner and he disappeared from view. Only then did I let the tears fall. The safe house was a cabin 2 hours north, surrounded by woods and silence. Nico and his team swept the perimeter while I sat in the living room, staring at the dead phone in my hand, cut off from everything. From James, from knowing if he was safe, if he'd found Sophia, if Victor had made another move. I'd entered this arrangement as a transaction protection in exchange for pretense. But somewhere between the elevator and now, between coffee stains and whispered confessions, it had become something else entirely. Something that made his absence feel like losing a limb. The cabin's silence was suffocating. I spent the first 3 days pacing, jumping at every sound, checking my dead phone compulsively like it might somehow come back to life with news. Nico and his team maintained professional distance, speaking only when necessary, their presence a constant reminder that I was being protected from a very real threat. On the 4th day, I stopped pacing and started spiraling. What if James was hurt? What if Victor had anticipated his moves? What if Sophia was already— I couldn't finish the thought. I sat by the window, watching pine trees sway in the wind, and forced myself to confront the truth I'd been avoiding. I cared about James Thompson. Not as an arrangement, not as a means of protection, but as him, the man who'd stepped between me and Mark without hesitation, who'd touched my hand like it was precious, who'd looked at me in the penthouse lobby like leaving me behind was tearing him apart. When had it happened? When had the transaction become something real? Maybe it had been real from the beginning. Maybe I'd just been too afraid to admit it. On the 7th day, Nico's phone buzzed. He stepped outside to take the call. Through the window, I watched his expression shift, tension releasing, shoulders dropping slightly. When he came back inside, something had changed. "Pack your things," he said, and for the first time since we'd arrived, he smiled. "We're going home." "Is he—" My voice cracked. "Is James okay?" "He's waiting for you." I learned the details during the 2-hour drive back. James had spent 6 days hunting Victor through the city's underworld, calling in every favor, leveraging every connection, applying pressure with surgical precision. He'd tracked Sophia to a warehouse on the outskirts, where Victor had been holding her as insurance. The rescue had been swift and brutal. 3 of Victor's men hospitalized, Nico said carefully, navigating traffic. Victor himself is in police custody. Turns out the boss had documentation of every illegal deal Victor's made in the past decade, handed it straight to the feds. And Sophia? Home safe, shaken but unharmed. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror. The boss took a bullet grazing his ribs during the extraction, refused medical treatment until she was secured. My heart stopped. He was shot? Barely a scratch, Nico said, but I heard the concern beneath the casual tone. He's fine. Stubborn. but fine. The penthouse was quiet when I arrived, lit only by the city lights streaming through the windows. Nico nodded toward the living room and quietly withdrew, leaving me alone. James stood at the window, his back to me, one hand pressed against the glass. Even from across the room, I could see the exhaustion in the line of his shoulders, the stiffness in his posture. James, he turned slowly. The bruises shocked me, dark purple along his jaw, a cut above his eyebrow, swelling around his left eye. He wore jeans and an unbuttoned shirt, and through the opening I saw white bandages wrapped around his ribs, a rust-colored stain seeping through. "You're hurt," I whispered, crossing the room without thinking. "I'm fine." His voice was rough, worn down by days without sleep. "Sophia's safe. Victor's operation is dismantled. You're home. That's all that matters. You were shot, grazed." He tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. "I've had worse." I stopped in front of him, taking in every bruise, every mark that proved how close I'd come to losing him. My hands lifted, hovering near his face, afraid to touch and cause more pain. "I thought," the words caught in my throat, "I thought I might never see you again." Something shifted in his expression, the careful control he always maintained cracking to reveal raw vulnerability beneath. "I promised I'd come back. Promises break. Mine don't." His hand rose, fingers threading through my hair, tilting my face up to his. "Not to you." The admission hung between us, loaded with everything we'd both been avoiding. This wasn't an arrangement anymore, wasn't protection in exchange for pretense. It had become something neither of us had planned for, something real and terrifying and impossible to deny. "I was afraid," I confessed. "Not of Victor, not of being at the safe house. I was afraid that I'd lose you before I could tell you." "Tell me what?" "That this stopped being fake for me." The words tumbled out, too honest, too vulnerable. Somewhere between the elevator and now, it became real. You became real. James went very still. Then, slowly, carefully, mindful of his injuries, he pulled me against him. His forehead dropped to rest against mine, his breath warm on my lips. "It was never fake," he said quietly. "Not for me. Not from the moment you crashed into my life and turned everything upside down. Even covered in coffee?" His laugh was soft, pained, perfect. Especially then, we stood there in the half-darkness, two people who'd collided by accident and stayed by choice, holding each other like we could make up for 7 days of separation in a single moment. "Don't leave me again," I whispered. "Never." His arms tightened around me, careful of his wounds but fierce in their certainty. "You're mine now, Debra. For real this time." "Yours," I agreed, and finally let myself believe it. We didn't move for a long time, standing wrapped in each other while the city glittered below. But eventually, the weight of everything unsaid became too heavy to ignore. I pulled back slightly, enough to meet his eyes. "Why did you do it?" "Do what?" "Risk everything. Your life, your operation, your—" I gestured at his bandaged ribs. "All of this. For a girl who was supposed to be temporary." James's jaw tightened. He moved to the couch, lowering himself carefully, and I followed, sitting close enough that our knees touched. "You want the truth?" he asked quietly. "I deserve it." He was silent for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with honesty I'd never heard from him. "This was never an arrangement to me, Debra." "Not really." He looked up, his eyes holding mine with painful intensity. "I chose you the moment you crashed into me. Before the coffee, before Mark, before any of this, I'd already decided." "Decided what?" "That you were mine to protect, mine to keep." He reached out, his fingers finding mine, lacing together with deliberate care. "I bought that building across from your cafe 3 weeks before we met. Saw you through the window one morning, laughing at something your coworker said, and I thought," he shook his head, "I thought I'd never seen anyone so genuinely alive. So real in a world full of pretense." My breath caught. "You were watching me?" "I was noticing you. There's a difference." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "When you ran into that elevator, when Mark grabbed you, it just gave me an excuse to do what I'd already wanted to do. Claim you, protect you. Make sure no one ever hurt you again." Tears burned behind my eyes. "That's insane." "Probably." A ghost of a smile touched his bruised lips. "But I've never pretended to be sane where you're concerned." I thought about the past weeks, how he'd appeared at exactly the right moments, how he'd known things he shouldn't, how his protection had felt less like obligation and more like possession. "I should be terrified of you," I whispered. Are you? No. The admission came easily, honestly. I'm not afraid of you, James. I'm afraid of losing you. I spent 7 days in that cabin thinking you might die, that Victor might. My voice broke, and I realized that this arrangement, this fake relationship, it became the most real thing in my life. James pulled me closer, his forehead resting against mine despite the obvious pain the movement caused. Then let's stop pretending it's temporary. What are you saying? I'm saying the 6 months don't matter. The arrangement doesn't matter. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. Stay because you want to, not because you need protection, not because of some contract. Stay because this, he gestured between us, is real. And Mark? Something dark and satisfied flickered in James's eyes. Marcus paid him a visit 3 days ago. Very polite conversation. Explained that you were permanently off limits, that leaving the state would be wise for his continued health. He paused. Mark was on a bus to California within the hour. Relief flooded through me so intensely my knees went weak. He's really gone? He's really gone, and he's not coming back. The threat that had hung over me for months, the fear that had driven me into James's world, it was over. I was free. Free to choose. Free to stay, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The arrangement's over then, I said softly. Pain flashed across James's face. If that's what you want, I want something real. I moved closer, my hand sliding up to rest over his heart, feeling it pound beneath my palm. No contracts, no time limits, no pretending, just us. The tension drained from his shoulders. He pulled me against him, careful of his injuries, and buried his face in my hair. Just us, he repeated, the words muffled but fervent. I can work with that, and that's the thing about these stories. They remind us that sometimes safety looks like danger, and love looks like chaos. If you felt that, if this story resonated with you, show it some love. Hit that like button, subscribe to this family of dark romance lovers, and tell me in the comments what your favorite moment was. Was it the elevator, the gala, the moment James said mine? I want to know, because you all make this community what it is, and I'm so grateful you're here. 2 days later, James asked me to meet him in the lobby. I found him waiting by the elevators, dressed in a fresh suit, dark gray this time, perfectly tailored, no coffee stains. When he saw me, his bruised face softened into something almost tender. Come with me, he said, offering his hand. I took it, letting him guide me into the elevator, the same copper-paneled elevator where this had all begun. He pressed the button for the 12th floor, and as the doors closed, nostalgia and something sweeter washed over me. Remember the last time we were in here? He asked, his voice low. How could I forget? I smiled. I assaulted you with cappuccino. Best assault of my life. He turned to face me fully, backing me gently against the mirrored wall. You were terrified, shaking, running from a man who didn't deserve you, and you were soaking wet and annoyed. I was intrigued. His hands framed my face, his touch achingly gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. You crashed into my life and changed everything, Debra. In the span of 30 seconds, you became the most important thing in my world. The elevator slowed, approaching the 12th floor, but James pressed the emergency stop button. We jolted to a halt, suspended between floors just like that first time. Only now, there was no fear, no panic, just the two of us, and a future neither of us had planned for. No coffee this time? I whispered, my heart racing. No coffee. His thumb traced my bottom lip. No running, no pretending. Just us. Just us, he agreed. And then he kissed me slow and deep and certain, claiming me in a way that had nothing to do with arrangements or protection, and everything to do with choice, with wanting, with love neither of us had expected, but both of us had found. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and smiling, James restarted the elevator. As the doors opened on the 12th floor, he took my hand, lacing our fingers together. Ready? He asked, for whatever came next, for this dangerous, beautiful, unexpected life we'd built from chaos and coffee stains and collisions that changed everything. Ready, I said, and together, we stepped forward into our future.